Welcome to another installment of r/Prorevenge, where today a pastor lies, cheats, and steals and gets exactly what he deserves. Before we get started, if you enjoy these Reddit stories, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. If you're new here, welcome. I make videos compiling Reddit stories from all sorts of different subreddits. As always, let me know which story you enjoyed the most and feel free to suggest a subreddit you think I should visit. Now let's move on to the first story of the day, which was posted by MikeBWN_80. Students pranked me. I had the last laugh. I spent about 10 years teaching high school humanities at a small private school. For my first 2 years, I didn't have a classroom, just a small office. I would bring what I needed for each class on a cart and go from room to room, depending on which teacher had a prep at any given time. This was incredibly inconvenient, and not being the most organized of teachers to begin with, made things difficult to keep track of. There was a group of 11th grade boys who decided to make things a little more difficult for me. They were good kids and we got along well. I coached several of them on the school soccer team, but they decided that since my office would often be empty, it would be a great place to prank. It was never anything too serious, things falling over when I opened the door or things disappearing for a day and then turning up in a different place the next day. Nothing was ever damaged and I could never prove who it was, even though I knew. My school had mandatory final exams in each academic course. I didn't really think they were necessary, so I would generally make them pretty easy with a lot of preparation. I would give out study sheets and play review games for a couple weeks before the test, and there would be no reason the students wouldn't do well on them. I had approval from admin to do this as they weren't particularly fond of the final exam rule either. It was a school board policy. A few nights before the offending boys had their exam, I had a brainwave. I created a second exam. Gone were the multiple choice questions and obvious things from the review sheets. In their place came detailed questions about concepts that were briefly mentioned in class. Essay questions after essay questions, ambiguous questions with no clear answers, definitions of words that there was no way they knew. It took a couple hours, but I laughed the whole time. When the test came, I had the special exams at the bottom of the pile and handed them out to each of the 4 or 5 boys. I told my vice principal what was happening and he insisted on being present. I started the timer and watched as the boys flipped over their papers. It was all I could do to keep a straight face. Eyes went wide, heads were shaking, panic was setting in, especially as they saw their classmates flying through their exams. One of the boys raised their hands. Sorry, no questions during the final. You should be prepared based on your study sheets. I let them go for about 5 or 10 minutes of terror before I gathered the fake test and gave them the real ones. They all passed with flying colors and never pranked my office again. It was glorious. Damn OP, you sound like a teacher I definitely would have got along with back in high school. I hated when teachers would get me in trouble and send me straight to the office. If all my high school teachers decided to prank me back or humiliate me in front of the class, I would have respected them more. Our next story was posted by MadBR3991. Pastor lies, cheats, and steals. He gets exactly what he deserves. If you want to read on YouTube, that's okay with me. You can call me Caldra or OP, as my username is not easy. Okay OP, say hi to YouTube for me. Sorry, I'm on mobile. Also, I'm sorry but I need to be very vague about where this happened. The cast: Pastor Bob, not real name, Contractor, and me. Caldra, or OP if you want. Setup: I have been a computer technician for more than 15 years. I have worked on all kinds of computers, everything from tiny point of sales computers to large rack server computers. I had been attending a new church. I was trying to date a woman there and this church was her idea. That relationship crashed and burned, but that's a different story. Now we can start. It was about 5 years ago. I had just sat through a long sermon about generosity and giving to those that need help. At the end of the sermon, Pastor Bob asked for an additional donation because the church's roof needed repairs. It would cost $20,000 USD. That's right, 20,000 freedom dollars for a new roof. After the service, I'm talking to my date. Pastor Bob walks over to me. I said hi and he introduced himself. We talked a bit. Pastor Bob asked what I do for a living. I tell him I'm a computer tech with a shop. As I'm telling him, I have a feeling he already knows what I do. Pastor Bob asked me to have a look at his laptop. It's being very slow, so I agreed. I turn the laptop on and I hear clicking noises. This clues me in it's probably the hard drive, but I can still access the data. This is a good thing because it means I can probably recover the data. So I tell Pastor Bob the hard drive is dying and it needs to be replaced. I also tell him that I can probably recover the data. Pastor Bob asked how much it would cost to fix. I tell him for most people I charge around $250. However, I feel I can donate my time, so I would just need $60 for a new hard drive. Pastor Bob agrees, so I write up an invoice. New hard drive $60, labor $0, data recovery $0, and 2 to 4 days for repair. Pastor Bob signs the invoice, thus I take the laptop to my shop. I open the laptop. HP, why do you use so many screws and clips? I get the hard drive out and connect it to my recovery rig. I set up the recovery to clone the data to the new drive. But not the new one for the laptop. Instead, I transfer it to a high-end storage drive. I go home after locking up the shop. Next day, Monday, I open the shop and check the recovery rig. It's working, but it will take at least 10 more hours. So I start working on other tickets. Then at closing time, I lock up and go home. The next day, Tuesday, I had Pastor Bob's laptop for 2 days. I opened the shop and checked the recovery rig. Good news, recovery completed 100% data recovered. Report says hard drive developed many bad sectors. Now I have a choice to make. I could put a 1TB hard drive for $60, or a 120GB SSD for $60. Or I could pay some money myself for a 240GB SSD for $100. I decided why not and put the 240GB SSD in the laptop. I then cloned all the data from the new recovery drive to the new 240GB SSD. An hour later, the clone is done. So I check everything and the laptop works great, and is exactly like how it was before the first hard drive died. Even the login still worked. Therefore, I call Pastor Bob and tell him his computer is done. He says that's great and he'll be here soon to get it. About 45 minutes later, Pastor Bob walks in. I show him his laptop working and much faster. He loves it and signs the pickup form. He then pays me with a check for $60. It's important he paid with a check. I do a bank run on Monday and Friday. So that Friday at the bank, I'm informed that Pastor Bob's check is void. What? Why? Pastor Bob had placed a stop payment on the check. Consequently, I called him and he ignored my calls. I go to church on Sunday. Pastor Bob gives a sermon about not lying. I walk up to talk to him and he avoids me. So I leave and decide I'm going to write it off. I spent $100 and some time to do something nice. A few weeks later, a customer walks in looking for a new computer. To welcome him, I offer him a drink and go over his options. I'm chatting him up and he tells me he's a contractor. He mostly does siding and roofing. He is thinking about offering solar, that's why he's getting a new computer. I ask how much does a new roof cost? He says up to about $10,000. So I ask him why would someone say $20,000? He had no idea. I thought it was strange, so I asked about the church. Contractor said it would have been simple and around $5,000, and that he could probably do it for less. Contractor then buys a nice new laptop. Sorry the setup took so long. The revenge starts now. Something about what the contractor said bugs me later. Why would Pastor Bob lie and say $20,000 for a new roof? And why would he stiff me for $60? I then remember I never cleared the recovery rig storage drive. I check and there it is. Pastor Bob's laptop data. I look around. It's slow and I'm all caught up on repair tickets. Fittingly, I look around a bit. He had all of his logins stored in a folder on the desktop, including his online dating logins and online poker. Did I ever mention Pastor Bob is married? I started printing his online dating messages. I look back and find Pastor Bob had been adult hugging several women from his online dating. He had been paying for his dates from the church's donation fund. I'm getting angry now. Then I realized he had adult hugged the woman I was dating when I was dating her. Oh my god, this pastor is a player. He does not belong in church. It was then I decided to break Pastor Bob. I printed out all his dating messages and the woman he adult hugged for the last 6 months. Except I refused to print the naughty pictures. It was an impressive packet. I then decided I needed copies of the packet. Therefore, I ordered 100 packets printed from a major online printer. A few days later, my order of revenge packets arrived. These revenge packets are amazing double-sided staple bound with a cover with Pastor Bob's face on it. Now the conclusion, and I think it's worth it. This church had a calendar of what the sermon might be about. The perfect Sunday was approaching. I go to church that perfect Sunday. I show up a bit late. Everyone is in church, so I put a revenge packet on each car. I have a few revenge packets that are in yellow envelopes. Fittingly, I put them in the mail. I sent one to all the high-ups in the church. And I sent a special package with some of Pastor Bob's naughty pics to Pastor Bob's wife. I set the return address to the church. I also emailed a bunch of people the revenge packets from a burner email. A couple weeks after, I went back to the church. Pastor Bob was gone, so was the wife. Several of the women were also gone, including the one I was dating. I asked one of the important people there what happened. The answer was amazing. I was told about the revenge packet and how everyone had gotten one. The day my revenge packet appeared, the sermon Pastor Bob had given was about the evils of adultery and cheating on your wife. Thank you, church calendar. The fallout. Pastor Bob was fired and shunned. Multiple women from the church have not returned, including the one I was dating. Pastor Bob's wife is divorcing him, and she is the one that owned the house and the cars. No longer Pastor Bob is now being sued by several people, including the one that fixed the roof. He never paid any of them. There were also rumors of a criminal case for embezzlement. No one has seen Bob in a while. The church might close if they can't find a new pastor. The church's money is very low. Apparently, he spent over $30,000 on online gambling. TLDR, pastor lies, steals, and cheats on his wife with multiple women. Gets found out and doxxed. Gets fired, divorced, and arrested. And no one knows I did this to him. Notes because you might ask. It's quite possible that several of the very young children and babies at the church were his, but I cannot confirm this. I have no idea where Bob is now. I would think still in jail. Damn OP, that was some story. The way I see it, there's only one explanation for why all this went down. It's not because he cheated you out of $60, and it's not because you found out the girl you were dating was also sleeping with him. The real reason is God wanted an unhonest man out of his house, and he sent OP to do it. He sent you to the girl who sent you to the church, which led you to the pastor, which also led you to fixing his computer and getting cheated by him, thus leaving you down your path for revenge, and ultimately completing God's plan. Gotta love it when everything works out perfectly in the end. That concludes this episode of r/Prorevenge. If you enjoyed, please like, comment, and subscribe, as this all really helps my channel grow and pushes me to create more videos. Also, I'll be posting videos every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday, so make sure you turn on notifications to be notified for my next video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.